Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to David Mclean. And David is joining us to talk about the key principles of change and what to do in the face of uncertainty. And let's face it, that's really something we're all facing at the moment, is a lot of uncertainty. So it's really nice to have you back for a third session. If you haven't heard the first two sessions with David and I, please do go back. You can find them on LinkedIn and you can find them on YouTube. They really are worth a listen. You will get a lot of value out of them. So David is a former Royal Marine. So for me, that makes him mentally tough as well as physically tough. But he's turned human behavioral expert, and he did this about 8 years ago when he left the Royal Marines and took up his passion for helping his clients really develop good mental health and wellness. And David works in both the corporate sector and he's worked with individuals as well in practice. So he really has a wealth of knowledge that he's going to, I think, share with us, and we will all be able to learn something very valuable today. So today's, as I say, today's topic is the key principles of change and what to do in the face of uncertainty. And I mean, that sounds like a mouthful, but I'm really excited about it because I've had a little look at the notes and I'm interested in these key principles. So maybe, David, you could start by telling us a little bit about the key principles.
Of course, and thank you very much again for inviting me on. I appreciate it, Helen. The key principles is something that I've kind of come together with, I suppose it's 20 years of experience if I include the Royal Marines, but certainly more over the last 10 years. Like everything that I do and that I'm proud of, there's no anecdotal evidence here. This isn't the world according to David. Well, it is, I suppose, but it's not the world according to my experiences. What it is it's research-based, 40-odd thousand hours, not all mine, of course, of clinical research, working with individuals and watching how they change. Ultimately, why are people not changing? Why are people not becoming the person that they want to be? A lot of people are, of course, and they're doing very well, but what is the thing that stops elements of our life moving forward? I've kind of distilled it down into a 30-minute lecture, which I won't be going through in full detail in that way, a 40-minute lecture. But what I'll be doing is, I've gave often, but what I'll be doing is I'll be talking about the key points, if you like.
Okay. Sorry, David, how many key points are there? I didn't actually ask you that as well.
Very good point. There's six. There's six key points. Yes.
Perfect.
There's six key points. And they're split into two groups of three, if you like. The first three is to get a good understanding, to allow people to have hopefully a final understanding of why people are behaving the way that they are, why you're doing what you're doing, why you're not changing. Because as working intelligent adults that will mainly be watching this anyway, people who are holding down important jobs, they still think, why am I not doing this? Why am I not changing? Why am I not fulfilling my full potential? And the first three, if you like, can start to kind of help to understand that. And then the second three are all about why, or what to do about it, quite simply.
Oh, okay.
Once you know finally what it is and what to do about it. And I'll quickly sort of we'll also go through them each individually, but the six of them. The first one is the evolutionary response. The second one is the stress bucket. And the third one is fear and limiting beliefs and how that leads to bad decisions. And that's kind of the problems. You could probably have 100 key principles to lasting change, of course, and we could talk about this forever, but these are the key ones that I want to make sure that the people realise that as well. There's also other aspects to talk about. But if you can get a grasp of these, then you're on your way. And the fourth, fifth, and sixth are what we're going to do about it. The three Ps, which we've talked about before: positive thinking, physical activity, and positive interaction. We'll talk more about that. And marginal gains, small changes, the importance of that, why we underestimate that. And repetition and how that works in the brain and the importance of all that good stuff.
Oh.
We're back.
Hi, sorry, David. We missed a bit of that because the internet connection is unstable, as we know. So the challenge, but we're back, and I have paused it. So that's great. Sorry. So just go over the last two principles again that you were talking about.
Of course, yes. So, well, the three P's was the fourth one. I think also we caught that there, and the fifth and sixth one are marginal gains or small changes, and the importance of that, because we often underestimate what that means, and we pay lip service to these small changes, and then repetition, how that works in the brain and why it's so important.
Fantastic. And I think those can apply to so many things in life. I mean, it's so funny when you talk about mental change, because even with marketing, this is kind of, we have the 8 principles, and in those there's lots of little things, but it's interesting that take little steps, repetition, all those things apply, and it's amazing they apply to so many things in life. So I'm really excited to hear how these principles pan out. So maybe then, David, what you could do is tell us a little bit about each of them, and I'll ask questions as we're going through them if there's something I need clarification on.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. So, as you say, this is the key principles for everything. And what I'd like to kind of explain is that the psychology that we're talking about here is the basic principles of life. You know, when you understand this, the foundational principles of your own behaviour, and recognise that we're all the same, we're all beautifully unique, but of course, fundamentally, we're all the same. When you get that and understand that at a deeper level, then you can implement these principles in everything in your life. Yeah. So you're absolutely right. So the evolutionary response, to begin with, is really just it's to do with the brain and how the brain works. Recognizing, and it's not always easy here in the computer, if you like, but recognize if we can imagine, and we're splitting the brain in half. The top half is the intellectual part of the brain, and the lower regions of the brain, the lower half below the middle of the ears, if you like, is the primitive emotional part of the brain. And the intellectual part, the prefrontal cortex that sits at the front, that's the conscious part. It's the working memory. It's the bit that allows us to have this conversation at the moment.
Okay.
And at the moment, it's attached to this lovely, vast intellectual resource, which is subconscious. And when you're working from this area, which is the area that we're working from at the moment, we're calm, we're relaxed, we're enjoying it, we're enjoying each other's company, we're chatting, we're thinking, everything's clear, everything's going really well and nice and normal. And when we're in that area, when we're at work, of course, we're nice and productive. We're rational, we're good at decision making. Now, unfortunately, we've got another part of the brain, the lower regions of the brain, and that's the primitive emotional part of the brain, as I said. In the centre, the most influential there is the amygdala, which is the little fire officer, if you like, the brain that takes over the fight-flight response, fight-flight-freeze response that most people will have heard of before. So there's one thing that we need to remember as well: the vast majority of the brain is subconscious.
Yeah, unfortunately.
I feel like there's the frontal prefrontal cortex is conscious, but the vast majority is subconscious. So it doesn't know what we're doing. It doesn't know that we're sitting in various countries, wherever we are in the 21st century. And it can only relate from an evolutionary point of view. It still thinks that we're throwing spears at animals 120,000 years ago, roaming around caves with bear skins on it. It doesn't recognise the differences. We do, of course. We're well aware of where we are, but in comparison, we have 1 or 2 actions a second consciously, sometimes 3 or 4. And the subconscious, which is the rest of the brain, if you like, has up to 40,000 actions every second. Wow. So we can see how much is going on that the brain is unaware of what we're doing. So when we start to think negatively, when we're not focusing correctly, when our, which we'll talk about in a moment, our stress bucket, when it fills up, we're stopping working from the correct areas of the brain. And I'll explain this more as we go on, but we're stopping being able to function as well. Okay. So the first thing is to remember from an evolutionary point of view is that we are extremely limited in terms of the functions that are going on out with our control, although we can control things as we go on, and compared to what we are aware of and what we're doing. Does that make sense? Yeah.
It absolutely makes sense. So our brain still thinks we're living in a cave. That's really interesting. Yeah. So obviously that makes us respond in certain ways. That's brilliant. Exactly. And then does that then move us on to the stress bucket? Because I love this principle. I mean, we've spoken about it before in the other videos, and I really like it as well. I love visual things that help me visualize it.
Exactly it. And so the stress bucket is the hippocampus, which is a little library of the brain which sits in the primitive area. So the more we worry, the more our bucket fills up, quite simply. The more thoughts we have in that bucket. And the less we worry, the more empty our bucket is. So the more full our bucket is, if we're worrying lots of saber-toothed tigers and dangerous things and all the rest of it when we were 100 or 1,000 years ago, then we're more likely to be in that fight or flight area. We're going to not be in the intellectual cortex, which was less then, of course, anyway. We'd be down in that primitive part of the brain, because when, even today, you know, if you walk in a dark alley and there's a group of guys or whatever it is that are happening, you start to become a little bit wary. You know, the cortisol starts to flow through the body. You become a little bit stressed. You become a little anxious. You become on edge. You become very obsessional. All these things are brilliant for that until you don't know you're out for a night out and you jump in the taxi and then you're safe again. So it's a very good and important thing. In fact, we wouldn't be here as a species. We would have been extinct years ago if we didn't have that. But transform that into normal everyday work in everyday life, and the pandemic that's going on at the moment, and the levels of fear that people have, and the worry and the things, because the brain doesn't know what we're worrying about. It doesn't know what's going on. It's no idea. We could be worrying about saber-toothed tigers, or we could worry about paying bills, and we could worry about whether there's...
Same old. The brain, as far as it knows, it's just worry.
Exactly. That's it. Like we were talking about before we started recording, is trying to get the hang of homeschooling and do work at the same time. You know, it's filling up our stress bucket. So the more our bucket fills up, the less control the individual has, the less capacity they have to make the right decisions. So when people are fearful at the moment, which is natural, they're in the primitive part of the brain. They're not functioning correctly. There's chemicals called corticotropine, which floods through the top area of the brain, which stops people thinking, which is great when they're saber-toothed tigers or bears or dark alley guys in dark alleys, but not so good when we're trying to function, which is why people are not often making the right decisions. They're fearful of making decisions. They're fearful of doing the right things. They don't know what to do. They're not thinking rationally. And again, what do we say to ourselves? Well, I should be better than this because I'm a 42-year-old adult or whatever I am. You know, I've hold down this job. I'm intelligent. I've got degrees coming out of my ears. I've got all these different things, but I'm still not reacting. Excuse me. Still not responding, sorry, as I should be.
So you use, and so often when I see people in that situation, they talk about an emotional response. So in other words, they see it as not a logical response, it's completely emotional. You see that in all aspects of life. So it's interesting for me because I'm analyzing at the moment the way people are worrying about everybody else as well, not only themselves. You know, I see people reporting people because they walked on the beach, because they have this fear that's kind of driven into them. So it's very interesting for me that, this fear it's very heightened at the moment in people. People that I would normally see as completely logical and intelligent thinkers seem to make unbelievably irrational decisions. They're not thought through. So that's very interesting.
It's exactly that. The same happened to me yesterday. I was out for our walk with our son for our exercise, and there was a woman who was very rude to my son to get him out of the way. And that wasn't a rude woman. She had masks on, she had gloves on, she had stuff over her face and all sorts. That's not a rude woman. That's a woman who's scared. A woman whose fear has pushed her down, and it's easier to be rude to others. And my son was in the way, actually, so it's fair enough. But you can just see why people are doing that. And of course, bring that to business, bring that to livelihoods, which a lot of this is about. It's also if you post on LinkedIn. Bring that to running your business or being a good employee or whatever it is. And it's the same thing. And what do? We get annoyed because we know we're good people, really, and we shouldn't have said that, and my business is going. And all it does is continue to fill this bucket up more and more, which of course is why we talk about the second three, about what do we do about this. Because the spiral's going downwards or upwards, however you want to kind of say it. The bucket's filling up. And
so what do we do now with that bucket filling up, David? We've spoken about this in one of the other videos as well, so guys, go back and watch those. But tell us a little bit about what we should be doing with this bucket to empty it.
Absolutely. Let me just touch on the fear aspect, and then we'll move on to that bit. But we've kind of talked about that really already. But the fear, but there's other areas as well, is how your beliefs and your decision making, how that kind of affects it. And say we've virtually pretty much touched on that, but I just wanted to kind of hammer that point home a little bit. The fear will reduce your belief in what you're able to do. Mm-hmm. Your fear will make you make wrong decisions or make you procrastinate because you will stop you making decisions. And I work in panels and another few groups within LinkedIn and stuff at the moment. And one of them is that business owners are, because they know their own business, we talked about this last week as well, actually, business owners know their businesses and their sectors inside out, of course they do, but they're frozen with fear, and it's an evolutionary response. It's nothing to do with how strong or how weak somebody is. It's nothing to do with that. You know, there's no egos involved in this. It's an evolutionary response because you're fearful because you might lose your business. You've got 500 employees, or your own business that you've just started, or the job that you've just started, or the job you've had for 30 years, and that you're working in the retail sector, and of course it's hit quite hard. So whatever it is, those things are absolutely key, and recognise that it's normal. That's what I want people to recognise. It's not good, and we need to do something about it, but it's absolutely normal. Excuse me.
I think that's a wonderful thing to be able to say. Just forgive yourself a little bit. Just be a little bit less hard on yourself. You're not the only person this is happening to, and be a little empathetic to other people in business as well as in life. You know, just be a little bit empathetic, and it'll go a long way, I think. Yeah,
it is, because it stops you getting annoyed. Like that lady yesterday who was rude to my son, I didn't get annoyed at her. She's not in a good place. And when you're able to see that, then I don't get what did she do and why did it, and all this thing, and all it does is fill my bucket up. So you recognise it and see it for what it is. I'm able to put it into perspective, of course, thankfully, because I study this stuff. This is what I do, and able to put it to bed, and it doesn't fill my bucket up, if you like.
Fantastic.
But as you said, sorry to kind of moving on. What do we do about this? So the first thing that we have to recognise, and we've been doing this forever, but is the 3 Ps. Thinking positively. I just finished with a client actually just before, an online coaching client who's doing really well, and I remind them every session. Remember what you think about comes about. Remember, it's tremendously important not only to think positively, but make sure you don't think negatively, because you can be thinking about doing this and that and thinking about what you do want to do. But of course, thinking if you're also got that negative thought going, then it's detrimental to you and will fill up your bucket. And a lot of people, they may well be thinking, well, that's good, but you're almost going to sit rocking in the chair, don't you, trying to stop yourself thinking, don't think these things, or the reality of it. People might also be saying, well, that's very nice, David, thanks very much, but do you realise where my business is at the moment, and how can I not worry about it?
Yeah.
I get it.
And everybody's feeding you that fear as well, because of course, if you listen to anybody in the business community, they're all talking about how hard it is. There's people feeding social with how tough it is for them. And then there's other people saying, well, I'm thriving and I'm doing so well. So then you start thinking, oh, why am I not doing so well?
That person, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So,
there must be something wrong. Yeah, so I can absolutely get that, yeah.
No, it's exactly it. You're absolutely right. And so sometimes the best way to take our mind off these things is to do the other 3 Ps, the other 2 of the 3 Ps, which is positive interaction or physical activity. We cannot underestimate, and I know going running, etc., not everybody's able to do that, and we are reduced still in the UK at the moment anyway in what we're able to do. But we're able to do an hour's exercise a day. It's the chemicals that it produces. It produces a wonder of chemicals. But the thing is, it takes a little bit of time, which is what we're going to go on to, marginal gains and small changes. The thing is, it takes a bit of time for these things to work. And as human beings, we want quick fixes. We want the blue pill. We want the thing. We want it just all to be done and feel better. But believe me, change is simple. It's just not an easy thing to do. So the reason why it's simple is because we know running is good for us, or exercise, or walking, or whatever. Swimming in the sea, I've seen some people do. I don't know if that's right or not, but whatever it is, it's absolutely right. The exercise is tremendously important, but you must keep that. It's about building the momentum. And positive interaction, of course, we're very limited with that as well for good reason. But even across Zoom or with family members, it makes a huge, huge difference. That's what creates the chemical called serotonin, which is the one that we're most interested in, and many other chemicals, but also noradrenaline, and to combat the adrenaline and the stresses and the strains that we have, and the cortisol that we have flowing through our body because of the stresses that naturally are happening at the moment.
And so, David, if you were, sorry, I just want to ask a question there. If, for instance, you didn't have someone to talk to physically, so, friend available, or you just didn't feel like would listening to somebody talking about a positive subject, somebody who talks about something, a positive story, would that make a difference as well? So could you go onto a podcast, for instance, and watch something that's positive? Will that also have the same effect? Because I find that sometimes just listen to something else, listen to another bit of rhetoric rather than what's going on.
No, you're absolutely right. Yeah, because when we're in the metaphor or the analogy of rocking in the chair, trying to get away from that thought, then 100%. If we remember, I said before, thoughts create our feelings, and feelings create our actions, and that produces a result that whatever we've been thinking about. So if we're able to catapult our thinking into positivity because we're listening to a podcast that's very upbeat, then it's going to make us feel better, which is mean we're going to then do something. We're going to, make that decision we need to make, which means we're going to get the results of a bit of more money coming in for the business, or whatever it may well be. Yeah. So 100%. I mean, I listen to positive through meditation and positive affirmations and things every day. That's part of what I do. So
you would suggest that to people, because that's an interesting thing for a lot of people. I don't think enough of us really in life, because you get taught as a child not to be big-headed. Well, certainly in my generation, I'm in my 50s, and you were told, if you said positive things about yourself, then you were full of yourself and vain and all those things. And so that was kind of almost beaten out of you. And so I've always found positive affirmations very tough, always. But I recognize why, because I was one of those kids that went around saying how amazing I was and got told all the time, you shouldn't be saying these things about yourself. But so it's interesting for me. It is a good thing to bring back into your life. So that's interesting that you mentioned it.
And this is, it's another conversation, but you are very worthy. We're all worthy. And it's crazy. Of course, our parents only did the best they can because they were told by their parents the same thing. 99 times out of 100, they are always trying their best. But I mean, it's the most ridiculous statement, which we know, of course. And my parents said the same, that you're not worthy, and that somehow that is. Yeah, nobody likes a big head. I get that, but but being positive about yourself. I mean, we attract what we are. What we think about comes to us. It's physics. So we better think about that we're pretty decent people, because that's what we'll turn into. But yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and so that's a good practice. Thank you. That's something to add onto my list. I'm not doing, and I should be doing. So I will add it on.
Definitely. And point 5, as I sort of touched on already in terms of the marginal gains or small changes, as I said, we think change is a very, very simple thing. What I talk about and what others talk about in the same sort of knowledge, it's never really rocket science. There's people that we always learn something new, and that's great. But the principles of what I'm saying, people will go, well, I get all that, but they're not doing it. Mm. This is the thing. There isn't some new thing, because what people do is, we'll go through this, or that didn't work, and we go through that. Oh, there's a new thing. I'll try that for half an hour. I'll try that for a week. And the thing is, it's not these new things; it's doing it, and it is the key.
Yeah. And so, mental health is exactly like physical health. You can join the gym. That does not make you fit. Exactly. You've actually got to show up every single day and do some exercise. That's what you've actually got to do. And it's so true that so many people join. And and I get it in marketing as well. People, they don't do what they have to do, and then they say it doesn't work. And I always say, no, it does work. You just got to be consistent about it. So it's very interesting.
No, absolutely. And in terms of the marginal gains of small changes, it's that same sort of thing. It's that principle of small changes, that recognizing that the going for a run for an hour or for half an hour will not do very much for your overall well-being. It'll maybe take your mind off things to feel good. Do that for a month every day, then you will make a tremendous difference. It's about the movement up. If you can imagine the kind of the X and Y axis and the 0 to 10, and it's about it's about the progression upwards. What we do is that we want to feel better, so we do things that make us feel better straight away, which is a dopamine fix. For me, that's Jaffa cakes. Some people it's cream buns. Others it's chocolate, crisps, gambling, drug addiction, alcohol, and there's other things, aspects to do with that as well. Retail therapy, whatever it is. There's many things, but what it does is it makes you feel better. Oh, thank goodness for that. But of course, you just come back down again. So which is what people do. That's why they do these things. I just want to feel better. I just want to feel better. So I'll just go on the online gambling and do a little bit for a little while because I get that kind of buzz and I feel quite good about it. And of course, ultimately, it never goes anywhere. So we want to recognise that these small changes, the building blocks, that's what picks up momentum. That's what allows you to keep going and sort of moving forward with that. And again, quite simply, with the repetition again, keep doing it. It's the key point. I used to say when I teach psychotherapists as well, I don't do that now, I did run a training school for 3 years. I used to say to them when they were kind of starting to get an understanding of it, I would say, however important you think repetition is, times that by at least 100 in your mind, and you're starting to get to the importance of what repetition is in terms, because repetition is boring. It's boring
Oh,
for
absolutely. The first time you do it, it's exciting when you do a new thing and you love it. And then I'm in the business of repetition, definitely. I mean, what I do with marketing is all about repetition. So I get it 100%. You get very bored. Especially if you're not getting those dopamine hits in marketing, it's likes and some days are not like that. So you need to just keep going. And I would imagine with mental health must be the same. You must have days that are brilliant and you think, wow, I've made progress. And then, a week later thinking, God, this is not working anymore. Why is it not working?
Yeah.
And that's when it's harder to keep going.
Yeah, and those ups and downs is because the individual, and we can all do it, the individual is not running through the key principles of change. Because once you get it and you understand the first three, then you don't need to give yourself a hard time because
Yes.
You are the master or mistress or whatever of your destiny. And then when you implement the other three daily, and don't give yourself a hard time when you don't do it or it doesn't quite work right or whatever, but you don't need to battle with your brain. But when you implement them and you keep doing it, then the bad week, good week will go to good week, bad couple of days. And then it will eventually, and we do ebb and flow, of course, but it will get to the point where it will be because your momentum will be carrying you forward and you will be going in that direction. And nobody's looking for perfection. I've not met one person who's perfect yet, but we can go to virtually 99 days out of 100 are going in the direction that you want them to go in. Because your bucket is keeping empty because you're doing the things that you should be doing because you're thinking positively. You've got the good habits there. Yes, you're still in a glass of wine and whatever, but it's fine. You're enjoying life, but you've got the good habits. The routine, the exercise is there. You are not giving yourself a hard time. You are thinking positively. You're recognizing that you need to mix with people, even however much you can do that. You're understanding that even these small, tiny things that you can't be bothered doing are important, and you keep doing them.
So in business, it's very interesting to me because I'm thinking in terms of business as well. This is a really good thing if businesses just take these key principles. How have you seen this implemented in business, David? Because that really interests me. That I think that this sounds like I know simple. It's a terrible word because I get that all the time. Nothing is that simple because, as you say, it's the hard work that you put in that pays off. But how do businesses get this done so that their teams live by these principles and the business lives by these principles?
Yeah, absolutely. It takes a little bit of time. It takes big businesses, I always say intellectual businesses that understand that investing in their teams, investing in their people is the right thing to do. That's what a business is. It's people. And it's kind of an obvious thing, but business leaders sometimes forget that. And that it is the people there that are making the money and moving the business forward. And so, and integrating these, we generally have sort of longer programs as well that are more involved than this. But the integrating and understanding these principles and doing them on a daily basis, running through the apps that I have or the online programs or in the face-to-face when we did that, then and having the coaching and the mentoring aspect and the support, I feel like, then absolutely, this is not rocket science. It's just getting your head round about it once and for all, and then thinking, do you know what? I'm just going to do it. I'm going to be easy with myself. I'm just going to do it. And absolutely, this can be implemented in teams of 5 to 5,000 quite easily, and has been successfully.
And I think that's an interesting thing because I do think that, when I read all the trends, I'm very interested in where we're going. And this idea that business, I think there are going to be some fundamental shifts in business. And one of the fundamental shifts that are going to happen is that coaches are going to get more work. Coaches, mentors, people like yourself who deal with mental health. I think businesses are starting to recognize that it is so important to support people more. And that people go through difficult times, and that doesn't make them a bad employee, and it benefits the business. I mean, let's face it, everything's driven by profit. I understand that, and I'm not against profit. I'm not one of those people, but I think never at the expense of everybody. So it's interesting for me, and I think that we're going to come back a little bit to think about the people in the business. Well, maybe not back. I don't know if we've ever really been very consciously aware. So do you think that's also going to be a trend, David?
I do, and often there's that kind of thing that you can touch on there, that it's about the corporate social responsibility, or it's about doing the right thing. It's about looking after humanity, and it doesn't matter the cost. We should just let everyone be who they are, and there's that aspect of it which is right. But if the business owners who care the least, and there's some of them out there who couldn't care less about their staff, actually, if they recognise that a happy staff member, that going through these programs is the most productive performance-related thing you can ever do. Happiness is directly linked to serotonin, which is directly linked to productivity, which is directly linked to motivation and ability. And so it's one of those things, whatever camp you sit in, or if you sit in both, which most business leaders, think, well, actually, I just want a successful business, and this is what I'm doing. And I like my staff, and I want to look after them, but they need to work, they need to get on, and we can't give them too much. And, there's certainly a few business leaders that sit in that camp, which is fine. It's recognising that if you implement the programs that I run and similar, then you're going to have tremendously happy, tremendous staff that have great self-worth, self-esteem, that actually are tremendously productive. So it's kind of, it's like, we move away from this, we need to look after people, it's community. Well, we do, but actually they become better versions of themselves. Anyway, you can't stop that. So it's a win-win.
And I think it's interesting because I was in recruitment for many years. I ran 2 recruitment businesses. And the interesting thing for me was always that people really never left jobs. Very few people left jobs because of money. Most people left jobs because they didn't feel valued. And that, for me, says it all. So if you really want to attract the best talent to your business, and you want them to be loyal and to really help your business grow, then putting programs like this in place are just going to benefit you in a massive way, because if you're doing it and your competitors aren't, well, hey, you're going to get the best staff. So, it just makes common sense. Yeah, I love that.
A bit different, yeah. No, 100%, yeah.
So I'm going to put links below again, David, to say to people where they can find you. And of course, businesses can talk to you, but individuals can contact you to find out a little bit more about the program that you've got, an online program, which I think is fantastic. So there'll be that. And then your email address if someone wants to get in contact with you. And they, of course, can send you a direct message on LinkedIn as well, if someone wants to talk to you about something. So, David, it's been absolutely fascinating talking to you. And every time we do, I feel a lot more positive. So that's a really good thing.
That's good.
And I'm going to put these principles into practice, and I'm definitely going to start those positive affirmations again. I think that's a really important thing when I'm walking in the morning.
And believe them. Belief.
No, that's the hard part, is just to initially you've got to say them, and eventually you've got to train your brain to believe them. So I get that. That's the hard part.
It is.
David, again, thank you so much, and have a brilliant rest of the week, and we will be catching up again soon.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
Thanks, David. Bye.